Coming to you live from the city of Port Phillip. Welcome to our results special number 2 for the 2024 City of Port Phillip election. Tonight, we've got 3 wards to have a look at: Lakeside Ward, Alma Ward, and the mighty Albert Park Ward, which is the ward I'm sitting in right at the moment. Tonight, I'm joined by 3 candidates in each one of those wards that has kindly agreed to join us. So we'll give them a quick 1 minute or 90-second interview to see what their thoughts are and how they're tracking on these results. Now, the results we're showing you here this evening, just to be very, very clear, they're primary votes. So the initial number 1 votes that have been collected by scrutineers during the day at the Port Melbourne Town Hall. 3 wards have been done. And today, as I said before, it is Lakeside, Alma Ward, and Albert Park. These are unofficial results. They've been collected by scrutineers. These results I'm showing you this evening have just been published on the VEC website, so you can actually download them. And tonight we've got a little bit more data. The intention of these episodes is to give you information and commentary about what's happening on the election campaign. If you've got any questions or concerns or complaints or hate mail, please always feel free to give me a call or a text message or a hate message on 0478 136 762 or an email to hello@marcuspearl.com. Thank you for joining us online also. We've got a good number of people joining us this evening. Feel free to make a comment on YouTube or a comment on Facebook, and we can put that on screen and ask some candidates some questions also. Let's wait no longer and get stuck into the results. Keep in mind tonight we're looking at 3 wards. There were 7 candidates in Albert Park Ward, 5 candidates in Lakeside Ward, which is on St Kilda Road side of the municipality, and Alma Ward down the other area, Inkerman Street to Dandenong Road, which had 5 candidates in it. Let's now refresh ourselves on the candidates for Lakeside Ward. As we see them, as I said before, it includes the Albert Park Lake, but 2 very distinct districts in this area. We've got the junction area around St Kilda Junction, and then we've got the neck of the ward, so to speak, which includes a lot of apartment blocks along St Kilda Road. We had 5 candidates in total competing in this ward. The ALP had more. Greens, ratepayers, McDonald for the Independent Liberal Party, and Levi Silcox for PEPP. Let's have a look at the attendance. So 7,260 is the total enrolment. Currently, 54% of the votes have been counted that we're seeing here, and the informal rate is 2.35%, which is fairly low. Here are the results in percentage terms to start with. Look, Brian Mayers has done an outstanding job here for the residents of Port Phillip, 33.8%, which is a significant result, well above. No one can talk about donkey votes here. That's a meritocracy, that vote, and very, very solid. In second position, some distance behind, but ahead of the Greens, which is a credit to her, is Jo McDonald, independent. She's a member of the Liberal Party, but she's running as an independent in this war, coming at just under 22%. Impressively coming in second, beating the Greens, which again demonstrates another fairly poor result for the Greens, 21.12%. The ALP coming in with more at 14.89%, and Levi Silcox representing the PPP coming in at 5th with 334 votes. But 1,360, 881 beats the Greens. 850 is the total number of votes there. So interesting to see the results here, but a bit of a surprise that we got 1 and 2 in terms of the residents Port Phillip candidate and also the Liberal candidate. We'll talk about preference flows on that when we come to the commentary. Before we move on, though, we have Jo McDonald joining us now. Jo, congratulations on your result. Tell us how you feel.
Thanks, Marcus. So I feel it's very undecided and obviously a little bit disappointed about, the primary vote. But I guess that, the wards being quite distinctive, there is a lot of people that would have voted in the ward up all the high rises, and then there's a bulb. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the next, couple of thousand votes. And
how confident are you?
I'm not super confident, but I'm still proud of what I've done, and let's see how this plays out. I am undecided, but not confident. That's the
Well,
best way to say it. So preferences will play a big mark in this. I know my husband was down there scrutineering today, and some of the results that are coming through from what he's seen, it's obviously not formal, but are quite different to what you would expect. There was a huge amount apparently where I'm second preference on Ivy, which is, great, but, definitely not something I would have seen. Um, so at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a bit of a horse race between Ivy and myself. And I think the preference flows could put Brian in a little bit of danger. More so, yeah, Ivy, probably all my preference flows will go to Brian. So probably Ivy, if she gets up higher, probably won't mean as much to him. But if I keep above Ivy, then it could be curious. Let's just say.
well,
Undecided.
congratulations on your campaign. Any final
Thank you.
thank yous you'd like to give before we move on?
Well, thank you to everybody that supported me, and I've also said to, the constituents in my area, I'm always here, always here. So even if I don't get elected, I'm here to help you. So
Um, Good on you, Joe. Thank you so much for joining us here this evening. We appreciate it. And you will have a nail-biting few weeks ahead when we
I
get
will.
the B ballots in, and then also the preferences you tussle with the Greens for that second position on the TPP, and then obviously to see if you can get ahead of Brian at the on the primary. But well done, and thanks so much for joining us here this evening. We appreciate it. Let's now keep moving in our journey looking at the results. Keep in mind, these are interim results that have been observed by scrutineers. Actually, these are actually put on the VC website. Let's now move to Alma Ward, down the other end of the municipality. As we know, as I said before, it's Inkerman Street to Dandenong Road, Orong Road, down obviously to the junction area, which we were just talking about there. We had 5 candidates here. Foster for the Greens, Dick Gross, former ALP, longest serving councillor, equal longest serving mayor, I think. Justin Halliday, strongly aligned with Progressive Port Phillip, running as an independent. Brendan Pereira running for the residents of Port Phillip, and Jill Horman running for the ALP. Keep in mind there was an ALP tussle here. Dick Gross won the endorsement by the local voters, and then didn't get the tick from head office, so ended up having to leave the Labor Party and running as an independent. Let's stop waiting and have a look at the results that we saw here. 8,159 is the total enrolment, a good solid 54.59% of the total votes counted, and a fairly low informal vote here at 1.6%. On a percentage basis, Justin Halliday has scored again, a very impressive vote, particularly where he was on the ballot, coming in just over 30%. Residents of Port Phillip, Brendan Pereira, a solid 22.09. If you look at the other wards, that's a pretty solid result in anyone's question. And at the moment, a nice margin of 3% above the Greens. Dick Gross coming in at 17.64% in the 4th position. Not too bad, interestingly beating out the endorsed Labor candidate. So to speak here. So that's interesting in itself. A quick look here at the outright vote numbers. As I said before, it's almost 55% counted here. If you've got any questions or comments about these votes, feel free to make them on the Facebook chat or your YouTube channel. But some solid results here for Justin Halliday. Justin joins us now. Welcome, Justin. How do you feel about the results that you've seen today, and what information are you getting on preference flows?
Look, I can't help but feel good so far. 30% is more than I ever imagined or hoped for here. So, that just is testament to my campaign resonating with people, person by person, about Alma Ward itself and that focus. To your question about preference flows, I'm hearing from scrutineers that that people aren't following the how to vote cards, and I'm still looking to possibly get strong preferences from Dick and others, even people who've put me quite low on their cards. So I think if it stays like this in the next count, and if there's preferences fall, then I think I'll be lucky enough to be elected here. But anything could happen in the next week. So,
and what do you put it down to, the fall in the Greens vote and the ALP vote basically capitulating? The ALP got less than 10%, less than 1 in 10 people in your ward voted for the Australian Labor Party. What do you put that capitulation down to?
I think, look, when I did my original analysis of this ward and the voting patterns here, I had both the Greens and Labor at about 20%. And clearly, if you add up Dick's and Jill's votes, then they're at that 20%. So they kind of kept their vote. The big wild card obviously was where my vote might come from. And, it's come from all sorts of, it's come across all of the spectrum here. So I'm not just, over on the left or in the middle or on the right. And a very strong showing here from Brendan as well, with that 22% there. That's a good result, as we've seen in many of the other wards. But here, I think I'm not sure that it's going to be enough here to be ultimately competitive. But as you say, I think if Jill goes out first, then those votes will spread around, and all of us will pick up a little bit from that, and then it will be whether if Dick probably won't be able to pick up enough to not go out next in the preference votes, notwithstanding what happens next week.
No, good prediction. So thanks for joining us here this evening. Any thank yous you'd like to give to your supporters, etc.?
Sorry, I've got to, thank you to my campaign team so far, like not prematurely here, but everyone put in a huge amount of work, leafleting, door knocking, and just getting the word out. And thank you to everyone who's put their trust in me. A lot of people who I spoke to were very enthusiastic about and passionate about Alma Ward, and thank you for entrusting me with those votes. And I will not let you down.
Thanks for joining us here this evening. We really appreciate it. Next on the list is Albert Park Ward. Now, this was probably, I feel, the most interesting ward of all of them personally, I think, of the 9 wards we've got here, mainly because the contenders here and the real unknown about how this voting landscape would go. We had Rhonda Small, I call it the PPP, Progressive Port Phillip candidate, although they don't endorse Rhonda's on the committee. We've got Beverly Pinder running for the PEPP, which is Serge Taman's group of independents running. Lamb running as an independent, probably aligned and preferencing Sherson. Williams running as an independent also, but aligned and preferencing Hardy of the residents of Port Phillip. Connor Slattery, who I went to school with, campaigning for the Greens. Lauren Sherson running as an independent, but only one of the 2 sort of independent Liberals you'll talk that is running in this election, and Rod Hardy running for the residents of Port Phillip. Let's have a look at the results from these 7 candidates in this ward. The biggest, second biggest enrolment, 8,649 is the total enrolment. 62.57% of the vote is counted. That's the highest vote of any wards of the 6 so far that we've got some initial counts for, and the informal vote about average at 2%. Let's go straight into the results, and this is a very, very impressive big one. Let's have a look. Rod Hardy, 44.10% of the vote, leads Rhonda Small at 22.21% of the vote, with Beverly Pinder coming in third, beating Lauren Sherson just over 10%. And the Greens, keep in mind, this is Albert Park. This is, in some respects, Greens heartland, less than 10%. The 2 independents are the only 2 candidates here that probably won't get their deposits back at less than 3% each. But that is a thumping result for ROP and the residents of Port Phillip. And we're joined by the hero of the day for Albert Park Ward, Rob Hardy. How did you produce a 44% primary vote, Rod? Take us through it.
Well, Mark, I'm a bit buoyed by your confidence. But look, we've still got Group B to go, and obviously may go to preferences. But I'm a representative of the residents of Port Phillip, which I think has been warmly received by the residents of the city of Port Phillip in relation to our community group focus and our focus on the new council, which will have new councillors and a new beginning for the city of Port Phillip. So I'm really buoyed by the fact that we've been embraced by the community that we've really gone out to tell them what we are and what we're all about. So it's just not me. It's, as you realise, there's a whole team of people that have shown their professionalism and their connection with the community to get this result.
The other interesting thing in this ward was there's no incumbent obviously running in this ward, but there's a good association with Christina Sirikoff, which I think positively played for your campaign also. Did that come up in the campaign as a bit of a secret weapon for you? And you know, did you predict this result when you were looking at the numbers in the past few weeks?
No, not really. I thought there was some excellent campaigns done by obviously by Lauren and obviously by Rhonda Small, and they've been very competitive out on the campaign trail. Christine has been by my side virtually constantly through introducing me to people that she knew and the people that she served, and her exuberance for her place on the previous council. So yeah, she's been a great factor, but also representing the residents of Port Phillip as well.
Now, I'm not scientific, but I would put it as probable that the residents of Port Phillip are going to have 3 seats on council.
Yeah, and again, that's an indication of the way we've been able to connect with the community within the city of Port Phillip. And I hope they've given us an enormous responsibility that I hope to carry right through the next 4 years in representing their interests and their interests only.
Interestingly, just on the preference flows, I've got some data here from some scrutineers that got some good samples saying about 71% of Lauren Sherson's preferences were heading your way. So I think you're probably looking for a comfortable victory there, Rod.
Preferences, you know, they're like a small stone in your shoe. They can end up under your heel, they can end up around your toes, but they're awfully uncomfortable. And really what we've seen is that preferences aren't really being followed by the voters on how to vote cards. Like 71%, people usually follow 90, 95 to 100% on how to vote card, but obviously they've been all over the place in this election.
No, that's very good. Well done, Rod. Do you want to say thank you to any supporters or any of your family? Use this opportunity, perhaps.
Yeah, certainly. The support's been just enormous on my side of things in the Albert Park ward, and of course, as you know, Marcus, the family's a big thing too. You know, they've got to put up with our absence, the electioneering, and sometimes a bit of a short temper from the candidates. So I certainly thank the family, and I certainly thank the support I've had from all the people in the Albert Park ward.
Thanks for joining us tonight, Rod. We really, really appreciate it. Happy to hang around if you want to keep watching, but I understand you've got a family event to go to. But good luck in the next couple of days. Also, I'm joined by our expert panel again. Greg Day, Andrew Bond, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us. The big question here that we've got to ask Marcus is Greg prepared to get off the fence in Albert Park ward and predict a winner?
That's not Albert Park you're showing us there.
No, I'll get there. I'll do the dirty flick back. Hang on, let me bring this back. Greg, do you predict?
Are you prepared to get off the fence in Albert Park, Greg? Are you going to call it?
Well, I think we'd have to, wouldn't we?
Yeah, you know, it's a very, very much an interesting outcome. You know, for Rod Hardy to be on 44%, I think that would probably be close to the highest primary vote for a 7-candidate single-member ward in the state. It's almost unheard of for a candidate to get close to 50% with so many other people running in that ward in what was meant to be a fairly competitive ward. I think when we did our initial analysis, Marcus, we had 4 people who we thought would be 2 semi-finals and a final. Well, Rod has come in and just blown them all away.
Yes, I can't disagree. No, I think the Greens will be disappointed. Lauren will be disappointed.
Yeah, I did have a quick call with Lauren earlier before we came on here. It's fair to say she's a bit disappointed with how it's eventuated, but she's not the only person I've had to give a phone call to today to check out how they're going. And there's a lot of disappointed candidates out there, as you can only imagine when an election's over and results don't go the way that people are expecting. So yeah, Lauren, she's not on her own. There's a fair few disappointed people out there along with Lauren.
Yeah, and I think there'll be certainly a few vinos being drunk in the progressive Port Phillip dinner party scene tonight, I think.
Not just progressive Port Phillip, but I think that the Greens and the ALP would also be disappointed with how they've gone so far. It's probably across the board. People, I really thought the next council was going to be a very left-dominated council. That was the general feeling that everyone thought was going to happen, and it just hasn't turned out like that. I think the Greens and ALP will be doing a little bit of soul searching as to why it is that their votes haven't eventuated the way most people would have predicted they were going to.
Well, yes, and Marcus and I both thought that the elimination of the opt-in non-resident voters would have an effect on the Conservative vote, but it hasn't turned out that way.
Yeah, that was the other thing we haven't really touched on, but there's been probably 2,000 or 3,000 people at least who had the opportunity to vote last time who won't be voting this time. They're all out of area landlords. The general feeling is that they tend to lean towards the Conservative side of politics, and that the absence of that vote would not help the Conservative side of politics. And it sort of hasn't really happened here. It's Labor and the Greens and the left side of politics which appears to be suffering in what we've seen so far in the 6 wards results we have. I think you're on mute, Marcus.
I just got a text message from someone asking what the Liberal vote actually what happened to it, and looking at these results, I think if you're the federal Liberal candidate for Macnamara or looking to run for one of the state seats like Brighton, you'd be very happy with the results you're seeing coming through in terms of the ALP vote and the Greens vote.
Well, if you want to put it into perspective, Marcus, Catherine Copsey at the last 2 council elections got a quota in her own right in Lake Ward, which covers most of St Kilda and most of Albert Park. It's generally the 2 wards that form St Kilda and Albert Park today. We've got Tim Baxter got 12% in St Kilda, and we saw the Greens candidate in Albert Park, Connor Slattery, get 9%. So it's over a halving of the Greens vote versus what Catherine Copsey got for the last 2 council elections.
Yeah, and if you look at this through a Conservative vote lens, this is good news. This is very good news. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Very, very good news with an asterisk next to it, Marcus.
Yeah, true.
It's not entirely good news.
Let's go through these wards and do a bit more analysis in terms of what we saw. Obviously, we're a bit obsessed with Albert Park ward at the moment because we've all been waiting for that result, and I think none of us predicted that result. We thought it would probably be a lot closer between Shearson and Hardy, but also keep in mind it wasn't close at all between Small and Slattery at all. So really, Rod Hardy and Rhonda Small were the 2 highest 2 primary votes easily, but probably we're a bit surprised about the lower votes on the other 2 that we're talking about. Let's now go to not Alma ward, Lakeside ward. Give us some predictions on this ward, Andrew and Greg.
I think only Mears and McDonald can win this. The big outcome here is the Greens finishing 3rd and 4th again. We've spoke about that as a theme across yesterday and today. It was expected at least one of them would finish in the top 2, but that just hasn't happened. McDonald, in order to win, needs to hope she can stay ahead of Pirlo from the Greens and go into the final 2 against Mears, and then hope for some very strong preference flows from the Greens and the ALP, who both put Mears last. McDonald would need 70% plus of their preferences to finish in front of Mears, which is a very big ask. But the scrutineers that were in there today have said there is a very strong female-to-female vote in play here with McDonald and Pirlo. So it could happen if McDonald was able to stay in second. The issue for McDonald is that Barney Moore's preferences go to Pirlo, and that may put the Greens in front of Joe McDonald and into the final 2, in which case McDonald's preferences are likely to flow to Mears and get him home. I don't think there's as strong a female-to-female preference flow from McDonald to Pirlo as there is from Pirlo to McDonald.
I would so also, before I go to you, Greg, is I've got some information from scrutineers today that were talking to the green scrutineers in the room that were saying they expect to do well in Group B. These ballots are cast in Port Melbourne Town Hall, especially on Friday. The postal votes received until last Friday, and they say that they're going to win a bigger proportion of those votes. I don't know if that's true, but we'll wait and see what happens. I wouldn't think that would apply for this ward. Greg, what's your thought?
It's only a 30 vote difference between Purlow and McDonald as well, so it's not much,
true.
and very, very easy gap to close.
Yeah, true, very true. Greg, your view on this ward, if you got one?
Well,
sit on the fence.
Oh, you guys are so charming. No, look,
off the fence,
it's too early to tell. You do need that second lot because it's so close in that middle. So we don't know who the final two are. But I reckon it's pretty clear that the ratepayers person is going to be the most likely winner.
Yeah, I think it's Jamie John's got a chance, but at the moment I think Brian Mears is probably going to get across the line on this one, but we'll have to wait and see. That I think that gap is just not far enough between Joe and the Greens, and probably a bit too far in terms of Brian at a percentage level. But we don't know how these are going to flow. But I'm paid to give a prediction, so that there is one. But I hope I'm wrong because I gave an endorsement to Joe McDonald, so I'm completely biased.
Same.
Oh, you did too. There you go. Yeah. Sorry, Greg, what were you going to say?
Well, I've said that I thought it's most likely going to be the Rob candidate that will win. So I'm on the fence.
No, that's okay. All right, let's now move to Alma ward, which you're a bit more of an expert on down here, Greg. What was your view particularly on? Why don't we talk about Dick Gross's primary vote and the ALP primary vote? What's your view there, Greg?
Well, no, I think we should talk about Justin's first, because Justin has done a very enthusiastic campaign. He's been, he's been at supermarkets, he's been at train stops, he's been the Energizer Bunny in this campaign, and it's paid off. And, I think the Labor vote's been split. That's pretty obvious. The Labor vote there, Dick would be disappointed. He would have been hoping for a Jewish bonus, which the 25% of the people in this ward are Jewish, and he would have hoped for a higher vote in his own right from that.
What are your thoughts about him getting above the ALP? You think ALP made a mistake here by not endorsing him?
Well, I think the mistake that they made was not them both being bigger than being big people and not preferencing away from each other, because he could have been an independent Labor, and he could have given his preferences back to them in a deal, but apparently it was never offered and never asked. So,
Andrew, predictions on this ward? How do you think it's going to play out?
Oh, look, I think Justin Halliday is home. The only query I have here is what happens when, obviously Jill Horman is going to be eliminated first. Does her vote go to the Greens or Justin Halliday, or are those rusted on ALP supporters who voted for Jill Horman in this election going to put Dick as their second preference and therefore lift Dick up the ladder a bit and maybe finish in front of Josie Foster or Brendan Pereira? If most of those people put Dick second, he's got a chance of getting into the final two based off that. But if, I think Greg alluded to, if there wasn't much cooperation between the two candidates, I don't think Jill, I haven't been able to locate a how to vote card for her, so I'm not sure whether she actually put one out. And if she did put one out, did she put Dick last or second last? That may be the only query here, which will stop Dick from advancing in this election. I think it's something we've seen where that as Greg pointed out, that the two Labor and ex-Labor people weren't able to work together, and I think it's probably cost them an opportunity to get elected in this vote.
Justin, you're back on stage. Did Jill Horman issue a how to vote card?
No, she didn't. We we had some preference negotiations, and I think there was some direction from Labor to not issue how to vote cards in a few wards, and so she didn't end up doing that. So she's got an open how to vote card. So those preferences will go all sorts of directions, at once.
And there might be a bit more loyalty from the ALP members who voted for Jill towards Dick Gross than there was from the ALP head office in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks
and
for jumping
in
back.
Balaclava, Buckingham didn't issue preference guidance either.
That would explain why I haven't been able to locate hers.
Yeah.
No, interesting to note. I thought Brendan's vote here was very good at 22. 22%. Obviously, the right vote, so to speak, had to find a home. But that's a solid performance.
That's not surprising, since they had a very big issue to run on, being the Inkerman Street.
Yep. And he ran hard on it.
Yeah, he ran hard on it, and Rop ran hard on it, and it's one of those issues where it was very important for a certain percentage of the ward, and those people clearly rewarded Rop and Brendan with their votes in this election for what they did in that campaign. I don't think he will advance any further, given I think everyone else other than Dick had him fifth on their how to vote card. So I think he's probably going to struggle to get elected from that position.
So I'm interested, Greg, any final comments on this ward before we move on?
No more comments from.
I'm interested to hear what you're now hearing in the marketplace, so to speak, and core trends that people are drawing from the results of the 6 wards that we've seen so far. What are you hearing on the street today in your phone conversations, gents?
Well, everybody's that I've spoken to has noted that the shift away from the Greens and the ALP, they both be disappointed with their votes. And it's surprising. It's not what the people at ALP head office thought when they made the voting system change to the single member wards, so they'll be disappointed. But we've still got the Part B votes, and we've still got to see how the preferences go. But I think the other lesson from this is that people's recommended preferences aren't being followed. So a preference deal wasn't worth the paper it wasn't printed on.
That's true. And even the running mates that were printed in the candidate statement didn't help too much. Well, the exception of Trina Lewis, who got a quarter of the vote up in South Melbourne ward. That's probably the one exception. Andrew, what are you hearing on the ground at the moment? What are people giving you in terms of trends and feedback on this election so far?
I've spoken to about 5 or 6 candidates today. Some are in a bit of shock with how they went. Some are very nervous about how they're going to go tomorrow. I think they've all reassessed their chances and reassessed their expected performance. Some are downgrading their expected performance based on what we've seen in the last 2 days. They don't believe they're going to go as well as they thought they were, and they believe there's others that are going to do much better than they thought they were based on what we've seen yesterday and today. I know, just a comment on the Green vote. I am hearing that the Green vote is down. It's not just a Port Phillip thing. It's happening in other councils across the inner metro area, where the Green vote is considerably down versus where it was 4 years ago and 8 years ago. So there may be something the Greens will need to address much wider than Port Phillip with that result.
And keep in mind, obviously, the election in the city of Melbourne, with the Liberals having a formal vote there, that not only the Greens, their vote is frankly capitulated in terms of the surprise, and that Liberals have outperformed in the city of Melbourne also. So there's interesting trends across these council elections that we should follow.
And that's Adam Bant's heartland too. So it's, they're finished below 10%. Last I looked, they were below 10%. That may have changed, but that I'm sure they would have been expecting to be much higher than that in the city of Melbourne. And I don't think too many people thought the Liberals would poll that well, but it turns out they're sitting on around 14, 15% last I saw, which will get them one councillor elected, and there's the possibility of a second councillor if preference flows are beneficial to them. They may get a second councillor up, but they're definitely guaranteed one.
I think the key theme I've also observed is that local people are focusing. Local candidates are predominantly the ones that are coming first in these ballots in terms of local independents that live in the wards. They're known to the ward area and they're supported by local people in those wards. It's a fairly obvious thing to say, but the people that have been parachuted into wards haven't done very well at all, assuming that they might get some party backing. And this will be interesting at the next election also now as single member wards, as you'll know, Andrew, because you've been a single ward councillor. If you don't do a decent job as a councillor and there's only one of you, people will notice. And conversely, you'll be rewarded if you do a good job as a local councillor under this system. Under the 3 councillor model, it's quite easy to hide behind a party brand or be that third non-existent councillor. Under this model, there's nowhere to hide and your community will notice when you're not doing a very good job.
100% correct, Marcus. I've been elected under single-member ward and elected under multi-member ward. And it happens at every council where you, after a certain period of time, some people become disinterested in their councillor role. And if they're in a multi-member ward, they tend to not get found out as quickly as someone who becomes disinterested in their councillor role in a single member ward, where suddenly you've got an entire community saying, well, where's my local councillor? I haven't seen them. Who can I contact? No one's responding to phone calls, emails, etc. And they very quickly work out that there's no one seeing to their needs. Whereas under the multi-member ward system, if you don't get a response from one councillor, you just go to the next on the list and then the next on the list. And you will eventually have someone who will get back to you, and you don't get to be found out as quickly as you do under the single member ward. So while some people may think it's a better system, it is much more demanding because you are it. There is no one to back you up. There is no one to take a bit of the slack. There's no one to deal with issues if you're not around. It's very much all you, and if you're not able to do that, you do get found out very, very quickly.
Now we're 37 minutes in and we've only got a couple of minutes to go, so we'll wind it up. I notice a few people are starting to drop off online. But tomorrow we have another really interesting set. We've got 2 incumbent councillors that are up in terms of results. We've got the incumbent mayor, Heather Consolo, that's been, she'll be tested in this election based on the results we're seeing here. I think her opponents will give her a run for her money. There's 5 candidates up in Port Melbourne. We'll see those results. 5 candidates also fighting out for the one position in Montague Ward, where the other first-term incumbent ALP councillor, Peter Martin, is up there. I would say also about the ALP campaign, Peter Martin has pretty much, from what I understand, single-handedly run that campaign in terms of letterboxing and getting around, probably with the exclusion of Elwood Ward in terms of Louise Crawford. But he's done an enormous amount of work, and just getting the information from scrutineers, it's fair to say the ALP's been a bit non-existent in terms of people on the ground. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that. What are any predictions you've got for Port Melbourne or Montague tomorrow before we talk about Balaclava?
I think the surprises will continue, is my prediction.
That's ominous. Greg, how's the fence?
I don't know enough about that end of the city.
No, fair enough. I'll let you off on that one. You probably won't join us as the expert tomorrow, but we might get your views and opinions on Balaclava. I don't know enough about what's happening on the ground in Balaclava, and based on my predictions so far, I think I might shut up. But Greg, what do you think about Balaclava?
Well, it's a mug's game to predict races like that. It's going to be all over the shop. It'll be much more even there, I think.
No, agreed. A huge special guest to our a huge special thanks rather to our guests tonight, Justin Halliday and Alma Ward, Rod Hardy in Albert Park Ward, and congratulations, Rod and your team, on a thumping result. That may be our best result. I know we've got a couple going, but that was a seriously impressive result by you and your team. And
Greg's
Joe
not so
McDonald
sure yet.
yeah, and probably the round B votes will come in, and they'll be, I don't know. I doubt it, but if that stays the way it is, that's an outstanding result. And Joe McDonald, also, thank you for joining us tonight. We did invite a number of people, and I would note there were a number of people that complained they couldn't come on I didn't invite them on the program based on the methodology I used to invite guests, but people were a bit reluctant, understandably, to come on tonight. But I do thank the 3 guests that we had on tonight. And as always, Andrew Bond and Greg Day, thank you so much for your time. We'll be joined by another special guest, hopefully tomorrow night, if she accepts. But again, questions, comments, complaints, hate mail, feel free to give me a call, 0478 136 762, or feel free to send me an email at hello@marcuspell.com. I love making these videos. I enjoy getting your comments. The intention of this is to get as much information as we possibly can out about the election. I keep on saying I'm a former councillor and I am biased, but I do my best to be as independent as I possibly can. Thank you for joining us. See you tomorrow.